Yes, good morning and you're welcome to a fresh edition of our program Summit. Today is the 3rd of June 2020. My name is Banji Busari. Of course, this is Summit and this is our midweek edition. That's Wednesday, 3rd of June. Today I'll be anchoring the program all by myself. Jumake is away on the national assignment, but be sure that very soon Jumake will be joining us back by Monday. That's the next edition of the program. There's no doubt that economic activities have started picking up, and people are actually the banks have been given the authority to run their activities 5 days a week. That's Monday to Friday, as against the alternate days. But not yet for the schools, not yet for the churches and religious centers. They've been asked to hold on. That some of them are even saying, some of the religious leaders are saying they can't take full responsibility for whatever happens in their places of worship. So government has actually, for some states, government has actually reached a kind of consensus and agreement with the religious leaders to stay at home, to run their activities at a very, very, very low 20 people maximum. That's to conduct religious activities. For the schools, no one is yet aware, no one is sure when schools will actually reopen. Of course, in some nations, schools have started reopening, but for us in this part of the world, we're still watching, we're still studying the situation. Also, students are actually relying on online activities, that's school online, virtual learnings and all that. But at the end of the day, we just pray that this will not take too long before activities fully get on course for our educational institutions. Like I said, it's the midweek edition. On today's edition of the program, we're actually looking at two fundamental issues. Two fundamental issues, one on economy, the other on administration, gas governance. We'd like to look, yesterday the Senate said it had approved a sum of 5.5 billion. That okay, the sum of $5 billion borrowing proposal presented by the government actually to turn around the economy. The Minister of Finance had told us that the only condition for averting another recession is actually to go for a loan of $5.5 billion. Of course, 4 or 5 institutions would actually come to the aid of Nigeria to raise this huge sum. Also, the House of Rep is considering approval for another $22.7 billion for other projects across the Federation. Well, this has been a history of borrowings. That's between 2015 and 2019, a sum of 22 billion debt had actually been accumulated by the federal government of this country. And questions are being asked: what have been the results of these borrowings? What have the monies been spent upon? Have we seen evidences of the borrowings that we have made over the years? And as a matter of fact, these borrowings are capable of crippling the economy. Again, today on the program, you recall that only 2 weeks ago, the federal government signed an executive order 10 that's granting autonomy to state legislators, financial autonomy to state legislators and then the judiciaries. Of what effect will this order be as we move on in our political history? This is going to be our focus on the program today. My name is Banji Busari. We'll go on a short break. When we return, my guests are here already. You're still on Summit, and this is our midweek edition. My guests are here, as I already announced. I have on my left, both of them, of course, are known guests on this program, regular guests, but we've heavily relied on them because of their depth. I mean, the contributions they have made on this program so far. From my left, let me start from my left. I have with me Gbola Oba, simply Gbola Oba, an entrepreneur and a public affairs analyst. It's our pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much for the privilege again.
And on my right, of course, is also another regular guest, very deep, like I said earlier on, Barrister Jide Ologun. It's our pleasure to have you here.
Good morning.
Before we delve into our topics, how have you been coping? Economy is being eased. I mean, the lockdown is being eased. Restrictions are being lifted. How are you adjusting to the restrictions?
Excellently well. Change is constant, so you have to flow with the change.
Barrister Gbola.
No,
sorry, sir, Barrister.
you hand that with a lot of studious labor.
You are not yet a learned person.
I'm not learning.
You are not
I'm
learned.
only educated.
Okay.
I'm only educated.
How have you been coping? How have you been adjusting to this lifting of the lockdown and then easing of the restrictions on it?
The easing of the lockdown is, for me, commendable. It's just that, let's be very honest with ourselves, normalcy has changed from what we used to know as normal to a new normal. I lost an aunt-in-law this morning, but the total number of the people that must be at her graveside today cannot be more than 20.
That's the new normal for us. We have two issues before us this morning. The first is Nigeria's debt profile, the implication for our economy. Federal government has always gone out cap in hand to borrow. I mean, at the IMF, at the World Bank, Swiss Bank, sometimes internally. The latest of such efforts or such decisions is the $5.5 billion that federal government has placed before the National Assembly for approval. And the Minister of Finance has told us emphatically the only way to avoid another recession is to go for this loan. That's $5.5 billion. Another one is also in the offing, $22.7 billion that the House of Rep is already also looking at. Let me first and foremost ask you, must we always go around to borrow? Or has it become inevitable for the government to go out to borrow?
As it is in normal life, people who are borrowing are people who have either out of indiscipline, either out of lack of attention to details, have put themselves in a very unproductive, or in a circumstance where they are not maximizing their productive potentials. And some things are inevitable in life. In order to do them, those who function in this box of lack of productivity or inadequate productivity tend to go a borrowing. It is the same thing with nations.
With nations?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I don't know what would be the opinion of my learned colleague, learned colleague. I'm not learned. I don't know what I can call it.
I erroneously gave you one, but you turned it.
I can't take
it. You turned it down.
I didn't turn it down. I would have loved to take it if I had handed it. But if I didn't hand it and I make claim to it, I will get myself into the box of disgrace that many who fraudulently claim what they are not.
All right. Between June 30, 2015 and June 30, 2019, the external debt the Nigeria's borrowing had actually increased by about $11 billion. That this administration actually inherited about $15 billion and above. But by 2019, that increased by another 11, making it about 26 or thereabouts. Now, would you say these were the right steps, or were they inevitable for government to go ahead and borrow this much?
Let's pick it from the business angle. There are about 4 or 5 stages that are critical in business. We talk about the business plan. We talk about the startup. And at the stage of startup, you may need some loan. So let's use Nigeria in isolation now. In 1956, we discovered oil in commercial quantity in Oloibiri, present Niger Delta. If we borrowed then to drive that business, then we can move to the level of growth, we can move to the level of maturity, we can move to the level of expansion. And today, we may not need to go a borrowing, like he brilliantly mentioned. I know that the first refinery in Nigeria was commissioned around 1965, and we have 4 today. And oil and gas has not been taken away from Nigeria, except that it's less relevant in the global market than it was then. So if we are borrowing now at the rate we are, we have managed this country in a very foolish manner. I'm talking as a businessman. And I would like to benchmark that with references we can go and confirm. In 1965, Singapore was moved out of Malaysia, not willingly. It was like a disgrace. And Singapore does not even have 10% of the resources we have in Nigeria. And today, Singapore is one of the best places on earth to live and to work. And I doubt if they are going around the world borrowing. It's such a high level of shame for I, Jide Ologun, as a Nigerian. And again, there is a difference between resources and resourcefulness. If my great nation could expend 11 trillion naira on fuel subsidy in 6 years, in the most recent time, and our refineries are still not working, I don't know what future we are going into. Right now, the House of Senate is trying to query NNPC on the high cost of production. Some Nigerians don't want to read about that. So we have grossly mismanaged this country. I challenge Nigeria. Go and look at the mandate of the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources and compare it with why we should be the capital of poverty. So right now, I think in 2015, the total indebtedness of my great nation was about 12.6 trillion naira. Today is over 25 trillion naira. What have we done? And yet we are still talking about infrastructural deficit. You see, so for me, I will go back to the word of God that guides us. And the word of God says in the book of Proverbs that the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. So if we think we want the future of this country to be secured, let's spend this money wisely. But there are several abandoned projects. So I wish this government the best, in the sense that in the window of history, all the characteristics will be recorded. And we are still looking forward to who will move Nigeria out of poverty onto prosperity. Because from the way we are spending all these resources, whether borrowed or generated, I'm afraid, on insurgency, what value would insurgency add to the country? How should we deliberately condone insecurity? We are diversifying, and the stakeholders within the sector of the agriculture are killing one another. It doesn't make economic or governance sense. So that's my position.
Thank you. Now, the Minister of Finance has actually told us that the only way to avert another recession is to actually go for this next borrowing. Let's look at the inevitability of this borrowing. We know the adverse effects of recession for a country. Loss of jobs, so many infrastructural decay and all that. Does the government have any option than to go for this borrowing?
There is a school of thought. Initially, when the former President Obama of America wanted to articulate the fundamental doctrinal economic principle of that school of thought, it was mocked, but ultimately it was vindicated. That is, you use resources, you use investment as a government to stimulate economic activities from the citizenry, and initially it would seem as though the government is, spending like a drunken sailor. But because those spendings are targeted, upgrade infrastructure, invest in human capital development, which Obama did with community colleges in America, because what actually caused, apart from the financial crisis that led to the depression that Obama came into as president, there was a fundamental dislocation too in the skill set of Americans, and they discovered that many Americans were skilled in obsolescent areas of life. So they needed to quickly make people be ICT compliant. They needed to make people be skilled in relevant, construction and other related skills. And it's over a period of 3 years. Fortunately for him, it was just about the time that principle was getting validated that he had to face his re-election. That was why he won his re-election. That school of thought has now, Obama was ironically mocked then, has now been picked by many nations across the world, even in Western Europe. Wherever there is a dip in the economy, the national government will surgically target certain industries and sectors of the economy with a form of fillip, financial fillip, with a view to encouraging entrepreneurialism, boosting skills. They also target human capital development. Now, if Nigeria is borrowing to say we want to see any young Nigerian between the age of 18 to 45 be reskilled so that they can be entrepreneurially useful to themselves and society and be value creators, I would love it. If they say and they claim they want to invest it in infrastructure, but we don't see the percentage of leakage that we have gotten used to. One of the most unfortunate things in this polity is that our psyche has been so abused that, like he said earlier on, some things don't jolt us anymore. So if they want to spend on infrastructure, because infrastructure too is a form of socio-economic investment that galvanizes economic activities. If the train service between Lagos and Ibadan comes into full this thing today, they said they finished, and I want to believe they finished the main line. It's just the extension from Costain to Apapa Port that is yet to be completed. Quickly complete that. Most of these containers disturbing traffic, making life difficult for people in Lagos, let them be ferried to a place like, a place outside congested conurbations where these same trailers can still pick them and go to disparate places and this thing in Nigeria. That would be nice. But I'm sitting here now, to be honest with you, I would want to believe that between 2013 March and 2014 March, Nigeria borrowed $17 billion. We moved from $48 billion to $65 billion in borrowing under Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. What did he use it for? Mostly for his failed re-election. Mostly for his failed re-election. I can't totally say. I said mostly, and I'll tell you. And I said no. I said he finished Abuja Kaduna Rail Line, but it was part of that money that they were sending instructions to the central bank to give them dollars, and the president of Nigeria sat in the mansion at Marina, and they were picking people from Surulere. I have typical example, picking people to go and pretend this is the Imam of Surulere, and they were giving $250,000 to them. Journalists like me were called. I was there. Liboros Oshoma was there. Ubani was there. I'm not saying we were called to a hotel. And the break I saw it was going, I left in anger. What's his name that was detained in Calabar? This young man that was detained in Calabar, publisher of.
Okay, I forgot his name.
He claimed that those of them who waited were eventually given $150,000.
So you would have taken your own.
No, I left because I knew it was going in that direction. And I told the Boros that day, I said, the Boros, the way this thing they go, our name go spoil. We go speak for outside, they go slap our mouth.
Okay, now that's where I will take it from. Between 2015 and 2019, this administration that's running its 5th year in office actually borrowed over $10 billion. Would you say there are clear evidences or manifestations or visible evidences of performance of the usage of that fund that this administration borrowed?
There is what we call management by objectives, and we have returns on investment. So if I should answer that question precisely, it's a reflection of failure. If you benchmark what we have spent
relative to what we can see evidentially,
we are talking of slipping into another economic recession. I'm tempted to ask the question, for who? Has this nation come out of recession?
and for so many,
Talking about the generality of the population.
that is it.
Maybe for them. I'm disturbed. Let this government come out, tell us how much we have spent on banditry, on Boko Haram and all these things.
On palliatives, they claim we spent 100 billion, which, a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria faced the Nigerian public and said they spent 100 billion on palliatives and that they were already giving food to school children that were not in school.
So you talk about prioritization. I gave the example of Singapore. There is a society we are all conversant. Dubai is not even a nation. Dubai is
a principality, just a shakedown,
just a
like a state in Nigeria.
And in the UAE, they also have oil, and decided that this oil may not be relevant forever. Let's embark on investing in our people and infrastructure. Like he said. And today, wealth is attracted to the UAE. You see, there are 2 levels of wealth creation. You can sweat to create wealth, and you can create an environment that will bring the wealth into your society. Which have we done as a nation? It's a big question. It's on record that Rwanda, I've mentioned it, recorded about $400 million from tourism in a year. And there's a tall ambition to double that. And yet in Kajuri here, we are killing tourists. I'm confused, I must confess, really. We have very beautiful plans, but when it comes to implementations, I'm so worried about this insurgency of it, because I know the power of harmony and national integration towards creating prosperity. And I was shocked when the Chief of Army Staff was telling me, I don't want to generalize now, when I was doing a study, that there are countries who have been managing insurgency for 50 years, that they will make sure Nigeria is not like that. And I'm sick with that. Let them come out to tell us how much has gone into it. So you see, when you are going on a journey, you need to identify the resources you have and the challenges on the way. I'm still waiting for that clear picture of where we are going. And I'm asking this question. This money we are borrowing, what value will it deliver? What value will it deliver that we, revive the economic activities that Nigeria is known for? Simple question. Can we claim that what Kano was known for in 1962 is what Kano is known for in 2020? Did we not have a vision 2020-20? What has happened? So we need resourceful leadership, and we are challenging the government. All these things were encapsulated in the political promises. And again, if you don't fulfill these political promises, then you have breached the social contract. And I doubt if it's a difficult thing to energize society. You spoke brilliantly, sir, about education. Go and see how Taiwan managed COVID-19. Excellent reference.
I'm telling you.
Because that is a
Public election system
that has high respect for education. The people are informed. There was high level of
it was at the
cooperation with
personal
the government.
level,
They
personal
were
responsibility
proactive
level.
about it.
That
You see,
schools were not closed, no public, this thing was closed, restaurants still function. And you know what? Because they are delighting the citizenry to a point where they engaged with the government and took responsibility. Everybody, they said 99.something% of people going out would use face masks. They were engaging in basic hygiene protocols, you know. And you know what? In the last 4 weeks, Taiwan has not recorded a single case.
Time there was in this country, in fact, in this state, when a governor, a former governor of this state, in his response to criticisms about borrowings, said he was not afraid to go about borrow, because whatever he's able to borrow, it will be an addition for the state in future years, because he would obviously spend the money on infrastructure, on education and all that. Now, for us as a nation, there was a time we had Sovereign Wealth Fund.
We still have.
The Sovereign Wealth Fund, which allegedly the governors insisted that the money must be shared. Now,
that was part of the creation of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. The governors wanted a puritanical adherence to what the Constitution says, and that is all the funds that goes into the consolidated federal consolidated fund must be shared between the 3 tiers of government. But at a point, you had a minister who did not quite convince them, but a law was passed.
Or were they not convinced? I mean, you rather have said they were not convinced.
To be honest with you, the irony of our circumstance is that sometimes the federal government pretends to want to play a higher game, but when they are pretending to play that higher game, you see a surreptitious hand wanting to muzzle the organic nature of federalism that should be the operation, the modus operandi of our constitution, and they further consolidate the paradoxical unitary system of governance that they enjoy at the top at the expense of quality governance to the people. So sometimes when we are analyzing issues, it's like the issue that is going to be our second point for this.
They are related. So we'll come to that. We'll come to that.
I tell Nigerians,
but the question,
be vigilant.
Sorry.
Don't only believe what the federal government says. Watch the hidden hand.
Okay, but the
what
question
agenda
is
this
was that not where we actually got it wrong? If the Sovereign Wealth Fund had actually been properly maintained and used for the purpose, the rainy day, as we found ourselves in 2020, do you not think that we may not probably have gone into borrowing again?
Like everything we do in Nigeria, we do most times in a perverted form. Things that we've seen in other jurisdictions, working well for the betterment of society, working well to consolidate, human capital development, wealth, growth, and sustainable development. You see, let me give you a typical example, just to yield for my colleague on that, because I want his own opinion too on that. Our Sovereign Wealth Fund, a chief of staff to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, chief of staff, the alter ego of the President of Nigeria, every file comes to him before it goes to the President. Convince the President to appoint him as the sitting director of NNPC, and he appointed his daughter as a fund manager in the Sovereign Wealth Fund. So whatever nepotism governs, do you see excellence in it? Let me yield to my colleague.
Okay. In yielding to him, I'd like you to look at the mono economy that we have run over the years. Now you alluded to that in your introductory remarks. Now, is there any way we can actually avoid future borrowing? These ones are already, it's like a done deal. But there are ways we can actually...
There are several ways. You see, you don't drown by falling into water. You drown by remaining in the water. So this is the time, we are talking of new normal. I expected it will reflect in the governance system too. A matter on the front burner now is the bid for the re-election of Adesina as the president of African Development Bank. Do you know African Development Bank was established in 1964 as a post-colonial structure for eradicating poverty and uniting Africa? In fact, it's like building the future today. What have we benefited from it? Out of it, we have there are about 3 segments. We have the National Trust Fund also as part of it. With all the efforts of IMF, World Bank, African Development Bank, where are the results? These are questions we're asking. Okay. By the grace of God, some of us have traveled. It appears that the same airport I knew in Ikeja in 1976 may just be about 3 kilometers away from what I know today. And you get to places like Dubai, you see infrastructures and you are amazed.
No, every 3 months, I have a business in Dubai. I have an office in Dubai. Every 3 months you land in Dubai, something dramatically changes structurally that you're thinking,
so we honestly, some people have asked, by the grace of God, we have no business coming out here to flex muscle over Nigeria. We love this country. God has blessed me. I can close my eyes to Nigeria. But you see, when you know what people have access to in the global environment and the beggarly nature with which this country is managed, you should be ashamed and you should need to speak out.
And that's why,
let me throw this to you. I have thrown it several times. How can you justify the fact that we have gold deposits in Zamfara state that can give that state $2 billion annually, and yet illegal miners are there?
All the way.
Do we blame God for that?
Again, that's why I'll ask you this. Do we have a national vision? Now, our guest 2 days ago actually repeatedly mentioned the fact that all these problems are bedeviling us because we do not have a national vision.
Let me tell you.
Now, even this, let me drive home this point. Even this debate about debt or no, whether we should go for it or not, there's a kind of division in the National Assembly. The APC lawmakers are saying it's the best. That's the best way to go. Whereas the PDP members think differently. Why do we always politicize issues about development, about growth and all that?
Most liberal democracies on the face of the earth are built on the ideological principle of adversariality. Just like a legal system, somebody will argue for the prosecution, will argue the reason why this person is a danger to the state. And
will that happen where there's a national vision?
I'm coming. And a professional too would also defend the person and say, no, you are being overbearing in your argument. So along the line, those who are dispassionate followers, the jurors, would then say, with the preponderance of evidence, we think this man is guilty. Or no, or you know what, the evidence is not good enough, because to deny a man of his liberty, there must be a higher. But you know what? Let's put to the word vision that you've used. Visions are usually set by leaders who know where they are going. The problem with Nigeria is that we've never had leaders who know where they are going. Let me be honest. Have you forgotten Vision 2020? What year are we now? At a point, another government changed it from Vision 2020 to Vision 2020. What year are we now? Are we going to have another 2020? But you know what? What has it become now? Delusion 2020. Vision. The difference between vision and fantasy. The difference between vision and madness from the person who is expressing that vision is the ability to use discipline and diligence to articulate the vision. But if you don't articulate the vision, you become a subject of mockery and they will say delusionist. So Nigeria, because we lack leadership across the partisan divide, across the tribal divide, because we lack leadership, we are now in the cul-de-sac of delusion. And if you use the word vision many times over, until you make a difference to the life of that young man, Adetokunbo, in Mushi, and instead of a Mohammed, who, when you see a vehicle, a commercial vehicle trying to park at the bus stop in Mushi, he's running. One day I was thinking, I saw about 4 boys running after a Danfo. Suddenly, they flipped open the back of this to carry, and I said, you know what? Even Bola Abba, you must feel like a failure. That in the society, ironically, that's my natal area. I was born in that neighborhood. That after 50-something years of your life, an illiterate woman who came from the hinterland of Yoruba land gave you quality education here. You became somebody who is exploring the world. And yet, in 2019, you could see youngsters who will call themselves Nigerians, like your own kids in America and UK, still doing this. My brother, we have no vision until we transform the life of that guy from somebody who chases a mechanical horse to go and tote, until we change his life to having a skill, so that the inadequate infrastructure, somebody like Alhaji Busari could get those boys together and say, why can't we build a bridge that will link this part of Isolo and Mushi, and we told it they are sustainable. When I was leaving Mushi about 30-something years ago, there was no link between Kayode and Ogumoku Street. I came home, I remember, in 1992, and a young brother was saying, we just drive through Ogumoku and Kayode. I said, sorry, we're Ogumoku and Kayode. He said, no, somebody has linked it. I said, it's the government, you know. The guy linked it in a very shoddy way. He just put tarmac anyhow. But you know what? For 20-something years, they collected 20 naira, and they've increased it to 50 naira now. It's giving employment to a minimum of 12 people, and the money he got from that, he became a member of the Lagos State House of Rep, because when politics came, he had enough money to give to those who were running for high office. They gave him marina to manage. That is the power of when you invest. You leverage one level of investment to go to another level of investment.
Thank you very much. We probably will be transiting to the other issue of the day, that's the autonomy for state legislatures and the judiciary. Before I actually do that, there's something that's actually the Speaker House of Representatives yesterday, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, hinged the approval of the $22.7 billion on the factor of inclusion of the Southeast in the projects for the loan. Now, should that actually be the factor?
You see, I think the singular, because in solving problems, you identify the symptoms and you identify the fundamental causes. We have only been dealing with symptoms in Nigeria. Love is absent in this country.
Love is absent. I think we should just hang it.
I am sick seeing the East begging the North for development, the North flexing muscle with the South, in a nation that God has blessed this much. I will use 2 countries and I will drop it on the table of our leaders. Look at South Africa. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison to debunk apartheid, and he came out and called these people that despite all these people did to us, we have to unite,
work together as a
team. That is love. All right. But today we are still making reference to what happened at Biafra.
50 years ago.
What happened at
why
was Boko Haram established? I've said it, it's on record. The things we say here, we are not imagining them. In 2013, President Buhari, as a candidate, said that clamp down on Boko Haram is an injustice to the North, making reference to the activities of the Niger Delta militants, who probably by insinuation were referred to as lazy youth eventually, in a country that is this blessed. So the Obas in Yoruba land will go to Aso Villa to beg for security. Easterners will be begging for development. But let's watch it. Greater things are coming. We can see the Almanjiris now. The Boko Haram that started in Northeast is in North Central. It's in Northwest now. So if we don't deliberately begin to develop the human capital of this country and our potentials, the insecurity of one is the insecurity of all. Is it not embarrassing? It's embarrassing to me. I don't want to throw that. It's embarrassing to me, sir, that in Katsina State, traditional leaders are being killed. Bandits are just operating.
People are emigrating from Northern Katsina to Niger Republic.
It's
Northern Katsina villages.
We need to love one another.
Gentlemen.
Maybe we need to come back to the point of unity of this country. And unfortunately, we are saying it's an untouchable area. And until we touch it.
Gentlemen, I think we should just hang it there. I mean, this is just a conversation that will continue outside this platform. The second issue, as I said earlier, is the autonomy for state legislators and the judiciary. The president of this country, President Muhammadu Buhari, actually did sign the executive order 10 recently, and the implication of that is that there will be financial autonomy for state legislatures and judiciary. Of course, allegedly, some governors have kicked against that. Now, why should that happen? I mean, the state must be seen as a unit. First and foremost, how would you assess that decision to give autonomy?
That decision has put me in a state of near schizophrenia, intellectual schizophrenia since it came. I am conflicted. I must own up to Nigerians. I'm conflicted between pragmatism and puritanism. I am a self-confessed constitutional Puritan. I like that we adhere to constitutionalism. I am a self-confessed federalist, organic federalist. Let's practice the federalism that we've seen in other polities that are prospering. But you know what? I am also not unaware of the excesses of our governors and the megalomaniacal arrest of states by our governors. Look, let's be very honest with ourselves. We are not running a modern liberal democracy in Nigeria. We run what is more of gangsterism, and the ultimate gangster at the level of the state is the governor. If he does this to the speaker of the state legislature, the House of Assembly, everybody, you know, they are mostly hallelujah boys. In the case of the judiciary, that is the most hidden to most of our people, but the most disastrous. The executive arm of government of the state, that is the governor, nominates or selects who is recommended to the National Judicial Council for appointment as judge. My brother, one of the most warped. I would rather that people who go to the courts, who have listened to fellow lawyers talk and know their brilliance, I would rather the MBA vote to nominate from their subnationality the person who. So there are so many dysfunctionalities, there are so many structural, operational dysfunctionalities in the way we have seen governors literally harangue or choke the state. So in view of that abusive hold on the state, I'm one who is thinking, you know what, I don't like the idea that the executive head at the national level would also want to put himself in a situation that a superior court has ruled on and the national legislature had amended the constitution for.
Okay, now let's hang it there. Good enough, I have a legal practitioner in-house, and first and foremost, would you comment our president, maybe for the first time in so many, in a long time, for this bold decision.
The executive order is a directive. It's not a law. It's not in parity with the Constitution. What we are debating is already captured in the Constitution. If you look at separations of powers and functions, sections 456 of Nigerian Constitution that's amended, and the 8th Assembly tried to amend section 121 that deals with this issue of money allocation and things like that. What has happened is that the governors have been reluctant in implementing. So this executive directive is coming to say, okay, if you don't want to implement, this will happen, this will happen. And what is an executive order? It is a directive given by the president or on behalf of the president. I think the first president that did it in the US was in 1876, George Washington, calling people working with him to come and let the people know what they have done in office. And now the governors are saying no. Why? Because like the elders said, he who pays the piper dictates the tune. And so financing has become like a tool of manipulation. But having said all this, I'm worried also that can we vouch that even with the autonomy, there will still be equity?
Good question. Good question.
Can we even vouch today that we have today? Even with
can we vouch? Let's hang it there. Let me give our viewers the opportunity, maybe a couple of text messages. 080-2352-1330. Now we have a kind of financial autonomy at the national level. Has it actually translated into real autonomy? That's independence of the National Assembly, or being able to do what they are elected to do? Let's take it from there.
The irony of history is that contemporary history is the most cynical of the part of history, and I will tell you why I've used that why I've made that dictum. Historically, under the founding president of this dispensation, Olusegun Obasanjo, we noticed that the executive was hounding the legislature. Along the line, after Olusegun Obasanjo and after the demise of the short-lived presidency of Umar Yar'Adua, we noticed that the legislature was becoming gradually assertive. That was when, if you remember, under Jonathan, we had the first rebellion in the lower chamber of the National Assembly, the House of Representatives. And the executive was so distraught that at a point, they sent goons to the National Assembly to want to prevent legislators from coming in, that people were scaling at the gate. Now, we move further to the era of the incumbent governor of Sokoto. The incumbent governor of
Sokoto. Aminu Tambuwal.
The lower chamber asserted itself by voting the speaker they wanted rather than the speaker anointed for them. You remember. That also was followed by, in the 8th Assembly, by the lower chamber voting the speaker they wanted in Dogara against the speaker anointed for them by the party with the majority. And at the level of the Senate, that had been so relatively compliant to the dictates of the executive, they also voted the leader, they voted the president they wanted in Saraki at the expense of. The irony, which is more cynical now, is that these two leaders of the two chambers are the anointed ones. And they told us from get-go that, you know what, they will do anything. In fact, the Speaker of the House of Representatives wanted to remonstrate openly with some members of the executive that was called for disrespecting his hallowed house, the House of Representatives, and he said he was going to report them to the president. My brother, I'm sitting here thinking a senior president that told us that anything the presidency wants, he would give. It's ironic that it is under their dispensation that the president is signing an executive order that is actually in consonance with an amended portion of the Constitution by the 8th Assembly. What an irony. What an irony that it is.
I will go back to you with the poster you actually gave earlier on. The autonomy has actually fallen on the laps of the state executive, state legislature and judiciary. How best do you think this can be utilized?
You see, it's where there is sincerity of purpose, things will flow.
Oh, yes.
But where there is pervasive corruption, you may divide the structure into 75. If each division still has elements of corruption, few things will work. Don't let me be absolute by saying nothing. There are great nations of this world that don't even have written constitution.
Oh, yes.
And things are working.
United Kingdom.
What system of government is run in Qatar?
Yeah.
You talk of, so many of us are carried away now by the health issues that came out of China. I was listening to a documentary. Go and study the Chinese political system. It's on autopilot of meritocracy now. That for you to emerge as a leader, you must qualify to be a leader. That is no wonder when they
people are equally qualified, are they not?
Qualification
By the constitution.
Sir, I was going to say something that we pay attention to that. Qualification in the realm of being prepared to handle.
He said meritocracy.
How many days did it take China to build the health facility? Exact the facility to combat COVID-19. We are talking about, a government that cares for the people, a government that is connecting with the economy of the future. Right now, I've mentioned it before, the UAE has Minister of Artificial Intelligence. We are talking of the new number.
Even Minister of the Future.
They even have Academy of Artificial Intelligence. Economists to come. But fortunately, there is a new agenda now, which is global in nature, which is the UN Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2030. So I hope our country will key to it so that we can minimize the series of crises we have right now. So my submission really is that even with the autonomy, if there is no sincere management of resources, we continue with
like we used to say,
but the moment we decide, like Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore told Chief Olusegun Obasanjo when Baba asked him that, hey Lee, what did you do? The man said, we decided to do the right thing and we continue to do the right thing. So when we come to that
I think
point,
we should just have we would always do the right thing.
Exactly.
I think the National Assembly should be urged to do the right thing always. The executive should be urged to do the right thing always. And the citizenry, by 2023, are we ready to do the right thing? Voting the people based on meritocracy.
we are ready. If they are not supposed to count,
Time may not actually.
If they are not using poverty as a tool.
Time will not actually permit us to actually.
citizens.
I wish I can have you around for the next 1 hour. I know so much to discuss. Time will not actually
Thank you very
permit
much
us.
for the opportunity.
I need to say that thank you so much for your time and the contributions you've made. Very valuable contributions you've made on the floor of this program. Thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you for the opportunity.
Mr. Agbola, we always appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for your time. Mr. Ologun, thank you as usual.
God bless
Thank you very
Nigeria.
much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
That's our package today's summit. My name is Bajibu Sari. We'll be seeing you again on Monday. Till then, keep safe.